The United States stands as a global superpower. Its foreign policy decisions reverberate across the world. From military interventions to economic sanctions, the exercise of American power shapes the destiny of nations and the lives of billions. Understanding the forces that drive U.S. foreign policy is therefore essential. This essay delves into the complexities of U.S. foreign policy. We will explore the intricate interplay between domestic politics and foreign policy decisions. The essay also analyzes the profound consequences of these actions on international relations. By critically examining the past and present, we can better navigate the complexities of the future. Join us as we embark on this journey of critical inquiry, shedding light on the often obscured realities of geopolitics. U.S. foreign policy has been characterized by a recurring pattern of interventionism. From Latin America to Southeast Asia, the Middle East to Africa, the U.S. has frequently projected its military and economic might across the globe. These interventions have been justified on various grounds, including safeguarding national security, promoting democracy, and protecting human rights. However, the historical record of U.S. interventionism is fraught with contradictions and unintended consequences. Well-intentioned efforts to promote stability have often backfired, exacerbating conflicts and fueling resentment towards the U.S. The legacy of these interventions continues to shape the geopolitical landscape today. The Vietnam War stands as a stark reminder of the human and political costs of interventionism. The U.S. involvement in Southeast Asia, initially framed as a struggle against communist expansion, escalated into a protracted and bloody conflict. The 2003 invasion of Iraq stands as a particularly poignant example of the failures of U.S. foreign policy. The decision to go to war based on the flawed premise of Iraq possessing weapons of mass destruction had catastrophic consequences. It led to hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilian deaths, destabilized the entire region, and fueled sectarian violence. The Iraq War also exposed the dangers of unilateralism in U.S. foreign policy. The Bush administration's decision to invade Iraq without the backing of the United Nations Security Council alienated key allies and undermined international law. The war further eroded America's moral standing in the world. The rise of sectarian violence and the emergence of groups like ISIS further complicated the situation. The Iraq War serves as a cautionary tale about the limits of American power and the dangers of hubris in foreign policy. U.S.-Iran relations have been marked by decades of hostility and mistrust. The 1953 CIA-backed coup that overthrew democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh cast a long shadow over bilateral relations. The subsequent installation of the Shah, a pro-Western autocrat, fueled resentment towards the U.S. and Iran. The 1979 Islamic Revolution, which toppled the Shah and brought Ayatollah Khomeini to power, further exacerbated tensions. The hostage crisis at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, where 52 American diplomats and citizens were held captive for 444 days, deepened the chasm between the two countries. Since then, the U.S. and Iran have remained locked in a cycle of confrontation. The 2015 nuclear deal, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, offered a glimmer of hope for a thaw in relations. U.S. foreign policy is not formulated in a vacuum. It is deeply intertwined with domestic politics and shaped by a complex interplay of factors. Public opinion, interest groups, the media, and the political elite all exert influence on the direction of U.S. foreign policy. Public opinion plays a crucial role in shaping the boundaries of acceptable foreign policy options. Interest groups such as ethnic lobbies, business associations, and ideological advocacy organizations also wield significant influence. They actively lobby policymakers, donate to political campaigns, and mobilize public support for their preferred foreign policy outcomes. The influence of the military-industrial complex, a term coined by President Eisenhower, highlights the role of defense contractors and the military establishment in shaping U.S. foreign policy priorities. The media plays a critical role in shaping public perceptions of foreign policy issues. The term military-industrial complex refers to the close relationship between the defense industry, the military establishment, and the government. This interconnected network of actors often pushes for policies that prioritize military solutions and increase defense spending, potentially contributing to a bias towards interventionism in U.S. foreign policy. Critics argue that the military-industrial complex thrives on a culture of fear and exaggeration of threats. They point to instances where the defense industry has lobbied for unnecessary weapons systems or exaggerated the capabilities of adversaries to secure lucrative government contracts. This revolving door between the Pentagon, Congress, and defense contractors raises concerns about undue influence and the prioritization of corporate profits over national security interests. Defense contractors, with their vast resources and lobbying efforts, can influence congressional appropriations for defense programs. Retired military officers often find employment in the defense industry, using their expertise and connections to advocate for specific weapons systems. This symbiotic relationship creates a powerful lobby that can shape the direction of U.S. foreign policy. The September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks on the United States marked a turning point in U.S. foreign policy. The global war on terror launched by the Bush administration in response to the attacks has had far-reaching consequences, reshaping the landscape of U.S. interventionism and redefining the nature of contemporary warfare. The GWOT ushered in an era of preemptive military action as exemplified by the invasion of Iraq in 2003. The Bush administration's doctrine of preemption argued that the U.S. had the right to use military force against perceived threats before they materialized, even in the absence of imminent danger. This represented a significant departure from traditional notions of self-defense and raised concerns about the potential for abuse. The GWOT also led to a significant expansion of U.S. military presence around the world. The establishment of new military bases, the deployment of special forces, and the increased use of drone strikes have extended the reach of U.S. military power. The focus on non-state actors, the use of drones and targeted killings, and the indefinite detention of suspected terrorists without trial have raised profound legal and ethical questions about the conduct of war in the 21st century. The rise of China as a global power presents both opportunities and challenges for U.S. foreign policy. China's rapid economic growth, military modernization, and growing assertiveness in regional affairs have led to a shift in the balance of power, raising questions about the future of U.S. hegemony and the nature of the international order. China's economic rise has been nothing short of remarkable. It has become the world's second-largest economy and a major trading partner for countries around the globe. China's growing economic clout has given it leverage in international affairs and allowed it to challenge U.S. dominance in key areas such as trade and investment. China's military modernization has also raised concerns in Washington. China has been investing heavily in its military capabilities, including its Navy, Air Force, and missile systems. The U.S. and China are engaged in a strategic competition for influence in Asia and beyond. While the United States remains a global superpower, its ability to shape global events is not unlimited. The U.S. faces a growing number of challenges to its hegemony, both from rising powers like China and from transnational threats like climate change, pandemics, and cyber warfare. The rise of China and other emerging economies is shifting the global balance of power. These countries are challenging U.S. dominance in international institutions, offering alternative models of development and asserting their interests on the world stage. The U.S. can no longer dictate the terms of global engagement and must learn to operate in a more multipolar world. Transnational threats such as climate change, pandemics, and cyber warfare pose unique challenges to U.S. power. These threats do not respect national borders and require international cooperation to address effectively. The U.S. cannot solve these problems alone and must work with other countries to find solutions. Given the complexities of the 21st century, the U.S. needs a new foreign policy paradigm, one that recognizes the limits of American power, embraces multilateralism, and prioritizes diplomacy and cooperation over military force. Firstly, the U.S. must abandon its unilateralist impulses and embrace multilateralism as the cornerstone of its foreign policy. Working through international institutions such as the United Nations is essential for addressing global challenges and building consensus on contentious issues. This approach not only enhances legitimacy, but also distributes the burden of global leadership. Secondly, diplomacy and dialogue should be the primary tools of U.S. foreign policy. While military force may be necessary in some instances, it should be a last resort, not the first option. Diplomacy requires patience, empathy, and a willingness to understand the perspectives of others, even adversaries. The U.S. must prioritize global cooperation on transnational threats like climate change, pandemics, and cyber warfare. The 21st century presents a complex and rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape. The U.S., while still a dominant power, faces a growing number of challenges to its hegemony. Navigating this uncertain terrain requires a new foreign policy paradigm, one that recognizes the limits of American power, embraces multilateralism, and prioritizes diplomacy and cooperation over military force. By learning from the mistakes of the past, engaging with the world in a more nuanced and respectful manner, and embracing cooperation over confrontation, the U.S. can help build a more peaceful and prosperous future for all. The path forward will not be easy, but the stakes are too high to ignore the need for a more just and sustainable world order.